Thank you very much. So I'm going to talk about this volunteer project, and specifically we're going to talk about the example of what happened in Haiti after the earthquake and how we helped with disaster response there. I'm also going to give a few examples of developing world kind of applications of OpenStreetMap. So what is OpenStreetMap, first of all? If you go to OpenStreetMap.org, see the website and you'll see a map. Pretty similar to Google Maps, so you can zoom in, you can pan around, you can have a look at the map. That's the map of Shanghai, for example. But it's much more than just a website showing a map. OpenStreetMap is built on the principles of open data. The very fundamental reason for OpenStreetMap existing is to release geodata for free. When I say free, I mean free from cost, zero cost, but also free as in freedom. So we give away the raw data with a Creative Commons license, and we give developers the freedom to work with that data, do whatever they like with it, change it around, make a new product with it, and release that with the same license. So it's quite encouraging to see a lot of enthusiasm for open data with the morning sessions today. I do think of OpenStreetMap as being quite radically open because it does give that raw data access. It's accessed over an API, but it's also accessed as a download. You can download the entire planet's worth of data at planet.openstreetmap.org. One single download, get a big blob of XML, all the data you want. And it's just available there on the internet, out in the open, and we very much push people to use the data in that way. So I hope that it can be an inspirational example to you of an open data approach. But how do we get this data in the first place to make it so open? Well, we have to really build it from scratch, in fact. And in developing countries, that means avoiding looking at any existing maps while we create new maps. Pretend that these existing maps don't exist. Start again from scratch and build a new map. And we do this as a crowdsourcing approach, if you like. And the idea of that mainly is to get lots and lots of contributors involved. But it's about being openly editable. So we say anyone can contribute to this thing. We invite contributions from absolutely anyone. So this means we need to have an editing system that's very, very simple. We encourage people to just go across to the Edit tab on the map there. This will launch a Flash interface, which you can see there. And that's a vector-based editing environment for the maps. We try and make that as simple as possible so that anyone can get involved in doing that. You don't need to have a degree in GIS to get involved in helping make the map. We've had some success with getting everyone involved. We just recently passed 300,000 registered users, which is pretty exciting. As with any online community, you tend to get way more registered users than you have actual users doing much. But you can see the editing activity in the bottom graph there is also very much on the increase. So how do we go about building these maps from scratch? As I say, even in the developed world, we do have to build the maps from scratch. And the way we've done this from an on-the-ground point of view, with GPS tracers, so we go around with a consumer GPS device, walk around every street in a town, for example, and build a skeleton layout, which you can see in the bottom left example there. At the same time, you can gather other data, so whether this is a one-way street, what the name of the street is, that sort of thing. So I like to do that with my camera. Other people will use a dictaphone, for example. But that's really, for the gadget freaks, it's good fun. If you've got a GPS device, you can go and use it in this way. But you can contribute to OpenStreetMap without having any of these gadgets. I really want to stress that anyone can get involved in this just with a piece of paper and a pen. You can go out, make some notes, add it to the map. The other thing we can do, of course, is use aerial imagery. Yahoo have very kindly taken a look at their sort of terms of use and agreed that we can derive vector data from their aerial imagery. Now Yahoo offer very high resolution aerial imagery, but only in some major cities of the world. So this example here is where I live in London, actually. But it's by no means global coverage. As well as trying to make the editing software very simple, the underlying data model of OpenStreetMap is very simple. So we represent the world, the maps, with nodes, and then connections to those nodes called ways. And then against each of those objects, we can store a name-value pair called a tag. So for example, a street would be represented as a way, and then on that street, on that way, we would have highway equals residential as a tag to describe the fact that it's a residential street. And name equals the name of the street. So we've got this framework for building maps from scratch. And it has been motivated by the desire to create open data in the developed world. But because we've managed to build this system that lets us create maps from nothing, we can use that anywhere in the world. And so this makes it a very interesting framework for use in developed world, in the developing world. So I'm going to move on now to talk about the Haiti example in particular. You can see here the Yahoo imagery in Port-au-Prince, and this is what we used immediately after the earthquake. So after the earthquake happened, we saw it on the news, and we had a look at how the map looked. Didn't have much data there. There was a little bit of data there from an import that happened before, but then we realised that Yahoo was providing some high-resolution imagery of that city. So this is exciting. We can immediately jump in there and start sketching the road layouts. And this is just ad hoc, people in their spare time, in their bedrooms. Let's help build a map of Haiti. Shortly after the earthquake, though, GRI released some very high-resolution imagery, so even higher resolution than Yahoo. You can really see not just where the streets are, but also the damaged buildings after the earthquake. So this was post-earthquake imagery. Now, an interesting point about aerial imagery. Some people don't necessarily realise that you can't just draw over any aerial imagery to create a map. That's a right that you license from an aerial imagery provider. So in this case, GOI was releasing their imagery for free for everyone to use as a humanitarian gesture. And they also very explicitly gave us permission to derive vector information from that imagery. So that's quite important to realise that that's necessary. So there was actually many different imagery sources popped up in the aftermath of the earthquake, different update frequencies, different resolutions. And some of the technical people in OpenStreetMap are pretty clever with this kind of thing, manipulating large imagery data sets. So we were able to create this sort of patchwork of different free imagery sources that were available, and get them into a format that would enable them to be fed into our editing software, so that people can put them in as a background while they're tracing over, drawing the roads. So this is the kind of tracing work that was done, starting off with a very skeletal layout, adding more and more detail. You can see that towards the end there we were adding details of campsite symbols actually, but it's people camping out in the street. You can see those from the really high resolution GRI imagery. So trying to create a useful resource for aid organisations operating on the ground. And there's the resulting map for Carrefour and Port-au-Prince. So really quite a good detailed map. But perhaps more important than the fact that it's quite detailed is that it was done fast. So this is how the map looks now. But in fact, we had the main streets layout in place after about 48 hours, which made it very useful for the aid organisations operating on the ground. And this is an area where actually there aren't any existing maps, not just paid-for maps, but there just wasn't maps of Haiti, apart from some quite old military maps, which we did actually use. We were able to use the old military maps from the US to take some street names. But, in general, this is a brand new map of an area that never had a map of it before. So I'm going to talk now about some different ways that this was then used. So you can use OpenStreetMap in a similar way to in a similar way to Google Maps as a sort of mashup framework. So bringing in the map as base mapping on an embedded map on the website. This particular example is Ushahidi, which got a mention yesterday actually. It's a system for gathering together Twitter messages and text messages from people on the ground, figuring out what the situation is on the ground. They used OpenStreetMap, actually making the switch from Google Maps to OpenStreetMap shortly after the earthquake, when they realised that we had a better map. Perhaps more exciting than that, there was on-the-ground kind of uses. So people were simply printing out OpenStreetMap and big printouts, pinning them up in the tents in their organisation centres, trying to figure out where to send people to actually carry out search and rescue work. They were using OpenStreetMap to do that. Another exciting use then is loading OpenStreetMap onto devices. So I mentioned that OpenStreetMap allows raw data access, and one of the exciting things about that then is that you can take that and load it onto a device as an offline mapping tool. Garmin units are particularly good for this. We figured out how to transform the OpenStreetMap format into Garmin IMG files. So we've got all the instructions on the website to do that. And people made special downloads for Haiti, so special download service. And the search and rescue teams realised this, downloaded the IMG files, loaded them onto their devices, then you can use those offline without an internet connection to navigate around in this disaster zone. And you can see there a message. We had really quite an impassioned message of thanks from search and rescue teams. In fact, we had several messages of thanks from various people, aid organisations. Without a doubt, OpenStreetMap has helped save lives. We use OpenStreetMap on a daily basis. Usually it's impossible to get this information. So aid organisations really finding OpenStreetMap very useful. So that's all I was going to say about Haiti, although I've got a video, so I'm just going to try and switch to showing you a video of the editing activity. You see there the earthquake's happening. This is an animation showing white flashes for every edit as it happens on OpenStreetMap. So you can see that the editing activity for an individual user, it can be quite systematic. They'll be looking at a particular area and doing lots of editing, but the overall effect is quite a random scattering of edits. Let's play that again from the beginning. You can also see at the beginning here how the community really counts upon the aerial imagery that was available to begin mapping. Yeah, the timeline at the bottom shows the earthquake. It's a red strip. I'm not sure you can see it very well actually. So these blue blobs are actually the campsites I was showing you earlier. Yeah, people spotting campsites in the aerial imagery. So I'll move on now to talk about another developing world example. We have a guy called Michael Maran who's spent over a year now in Kibera, the largest slum in Africa, in Kenya. And this is millions of people living together in quite a small space in terrible poverty, really. But they have quite a strong community spirit there, and it's difficult to get in there and build a map, actually. And there have been several aid organisations attempting to create a map of Kibera, and interestingly, none of them have really succeeded very well. Whereas Michael managed to do this with OpenStreetMap, not by mapping it himself, but by training the people on the ground, taking local people from Kibera and also other locals in Nairobi, and encouraging them to take ownership of their own map. So this is uniquely possible, really, with the OpenStreetMap framework. You can train people to do that mapping, quite simple mapping, and you can then show them also how to use the map. It's quite a tight loop turnaround, so they make a change, it appears on the map, they can print out a new map and use that. So again, this is an area that had never been mapped before. It's showing things like water facilities and medical facilities. But also, just as a general map, it's quite useful, and I think it empowered the local people as well to negotiate with the government about things like which bits of the slum were going to be bulldozed next. So I'll whisk through a few other examples. This is the Gaza Strip. Actually, the same guy, Mikhail Maron, spent a long time in the Gaza Strip, again engaging with local people. Another interesting thing about this example is the community banded together and raised about £5,000, not very much money, but it was a donation drive to get some aerial imagery. So we actually bought aerial imagery to use in the Gaza Strip. This is after Storm Ondoy. There was some flooding in the Philippines. So we mapped the extent of the flood, which you can see from the an organisation donated the imagery to us to see the after effects of the flood. And of course, right now in Pakistan there's some terrible flooding happening. This is the situation. We've been given some SWOT imagery, which is the dark blue area you see there. Some cities have Yahoo aerial imagery coverage. You can see that the spot imagery is running the full length of Pakistan. It's a really very large area. Now, the imagery that we've been donated there is fairly low resolution, so it's only good enough to do a skeletal road layout and the positions of some villages. But that's available in the editors, and there's still, right now, some sketching work to be done there. So if anyone wants to give it a try, you can help right now. So recently we've formed a humanitarian OpenStreetMap team, which you can find out about at hot.openstreetmap.org. And this is an attempt to get a bit more organised. I should explain that OpenStreetMap is a not-for-profit organisation. There is a company registered called OpenStreetMap Foundation. But apart from that, most of what OpenStreetMap does is really a loose collection of volunteers coming together on the internet. It hasn't really been necessary to have an official organisation for OpenStreetMap. But the humanitarian OpenStreetMap team is an attempt to formalise things a little bit, and in part mainly to engage with large aid organisations and talk to people about some serious funding for it. So you can see we're responsible for coordinating the remote mapping, brokering the release of imagery, so we'd be interested in talking to anyone who has aerial imagery who would be able to offer it to us. So that's all I have to say. Thank you for listening. You can find out more about OpenStreetMap, openstreetmap.org. You can see the map there. We have a blog at hot.openstreetmap.org, and there is a site called donate.openstreetmap.org, so we're open to that as well if you want to make a donation. Thank you very much.